Joining me now is Greaney, who is a prolific author. Um, Most recently, his novel is called Midnight Black Man novel. So tell us about Gray Man.
Sure, yeah. This is the 14th book, as you said. It's a standalone novel. You don't have to read the others. But the
Mhm.
Gray Man series is all about my hero, a guy named Court Gentry, who's a former CIA officer. In this book, you find him, he's been in love for the last several books with a Russian intelligence officer who's fallen out of favor with Russia, and she's been kidnapped by them and taken back inside the country. And Court is desperate. He doesn't have many friends. He doesn't have really anyone he can trust in Russia. Russia's the largest country in the world, but he's going to go in there and go in there alone and try and figure out where she is. At the same time, Zoya is in a hard labor penal colony right there in the center of Russia in winter, being worked to death. So she's trying to stay alive, and she's also trying to manipulate her captors at the same time. So it's a big Cold War style novel in a contemporary setting.
Very cool. So, and I know that different authors have different techniques, different ways that there's inspirations, stories that come to them. Um, but also the writing process is usually pretty similar as far as sometimes an author will be writing a book, or writing a story, and the characters start to speak to you.
Yeah, I learned so much from having dialogues with my characters. It's something I always tell younger writers. I will, if I'm stuck, and I'm stuck every day, it's
Yeah.
not like it's not a rarity, but very often I can just get the characters talking to each other, start writing scenes that I know will never be in the book, but try to figure out who they are and what makes them tick. And that gives you some inspiration and helps you figure out those sticking points. You know, I write a 150,000 word book. That's 150,000 decisions. And so I get jammed up all the time. And one of the ways that I try and get through it is to really go back to the characters and see what they had to say.
Do your characters ever say, "Oh, come on, Mark, I would never say that"?
Yeah, it's funny. That happens. Sometimes my editor will come back and it'll be like, "Yeah, that line wouldn't come out of that character's mouth. It might be something that I think is funny or clever or just it's like an opportune moment." But then you look back and you go like, "All right, I'm just doing that for the reader, and that doesn't really fall in line with the story." So you have to take it out or figure out for someone else to say it or save it for another story.
Yeah, there you go. I To me, I'm fascinated by the fact that people write books because um, people are a lot of times when people read, they want to read for escapism. They want to be immersed in a story that involves someone other than themselves, although put themselves in the story. But um, that's a huge responsibility for an author, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, my hero in my series, I kind of have the same, moral code that he does and things of that nature, and he's different from me in every other way. And, I want people to read for escapism, and I want people to read for all the reasons that I read, just to go to another world and to see behind doors that you can't see behind otherwise. But also, you put enough of yourself into your characters that you are, I look at it as a conversation between me and the reader. Even though the reader's not talking back to me, I'm going to hear what they like and what they don't like. And I want it to be a kind of a mutual conversation.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I know my daughter and I both like to read, and but my daughter will talk back to the book.
To the book. Yeah.
Yeah, she'll say, "Oh, don't do such and such." I'm
Yeah.
going, "Andrea, it's just a book."
Yeah, I've had people tell me they threw the book across the room because
Yeah.
something upset them or excited them or whatever, and I can't be responsible for any damage, but I like to hear that.
Well, yeah, because it shows how emotionally involved people become in your stories.
Yeah,
And that has to be a huge compliment.
yeah, I love hearing that. It's I'm not I've been a reader longer than I've been a writer, so when people tell me their experiences and how it impacted them. I can go back and think of where I was in the 80s and 90s and 2000s before I was published, and how books helped me through life as well.
How long have you been writing?
I've professionally been writing since 2009. It took me 20 years to get published because I was very sort of stop and start, not really finishing things. So I started writing when I was 22 and got published when I was 42. So that, now I'm 57. Doing it for a long time, but not doing it successfully for all that time.
Well, but you are now.
Yeah, everything's worked out in the end.
Yeah, very cool. So do you have a family?
I do. I'm married and I have three stepkids. I got married a couple years ago, and so I went from single to married with three stepkids. We have four dogs, so there's a lot going on around the house. We have fish. We've got everything. There's a
You're
lot
out.
to, there's a lot to keep alive here on at my house.
Yeah, you're slightly outnumbered now.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, but that's cool because that probably adds a little dimension to your books.
yeah. It absolutely does. Just as an aside, I was talking with my stepdaughter, who's 17, about an idea I have for another book, and I'm really jammed up on it. And as I was walking out of the room, I told my wife later, I stopped and I turned around to Sophie and I was like, if you can think of anything else, let me know. I'm serious. And that's the first time I've done that. I'm like, I can't really figure this book out. Maybe she can help me through it. She'll probably will come up with some ideas.
Well, very cool. And I like the idea that you're open to that.
Totally. Well, totally. It's a necessity at this point.
So Mark, where can people, I assume they can get your book anywhere that books are sold.
I sure hope so. Yeah, no, they're for sale everywhere. But I do have a website. It's my name, Mark Greaney, Greaney, books.com. And that gives you the links to anywhere you might want to go. And I'm on all the social media channels, so I'm pretty easy to find out there.
Well, Mark, it's a pleasure visiting with you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, good to see you again.
And we'll be back with more.